Hi, I'm Gary Boughton. Happy New Year and welcome to the 4th season of Zara TV at zarazone.com. This month, I'm going to teach you how to do a photographic illustration by using a photo. Tracing is not cheating. I don't care what people say. If it's your photo and you trace over it, the art is yours. There's no competition, there's no rules, there's just art. I'm going to teach you how to do it, and it's going to be fun, and you're going to be amazed at the techniques. So come on. To begin this month, go to zarazone.com/tutorials. Scroll down the page until you see the download button. Click the button, download the zip archive, unpack it, and get ready to go. What you're going to be drawing this month is this watering can within this picture. Just the watering can. Now, there's a lot of things to it. And what I've done to help you is, first of all, the design, the pattern around the bottom, I've given to you as a vector. And then when we go down the page, you can concentrate on just the watering can. If you click on it, you'll see that it is 544 pixels wide. Now, one of the things you want to do in Options, Control-Shift-O, under General, is to set your nudge value to 544 pixels. Which means that when you're done with the piece, you can click on it and move it over out of the photograph so you can better examine what you're doing. Now, let's work on the nozzle first. It's a fairly simple shape. Take the drawing tool of your choice and basically build a rectangle. I'm going to curve this a little bit here because that's the way it goes. And you're just tracing around the outside. And you might want to go up with the shape tool and modify the top a little bit and modify the bottom if you don't already have it that way. And once you're happy with it, what I want you to do is to take the selector tool and move it over just a little bit. And with the color editor shown there, click on the darkest color of the nozzle. What I'm going to ask you to do now is to make a duplicate, Control-K. Now I've colored this orange, and I'm going to recolor it a little bit later. With the selector tool or the shape tool, what I want you to do is to drag this duplicate's control points inward so that they more or less represent the lightest yellow shape on the nozzle. And what I want you to do is refine those edges a little bit using the shape tool. And once you've got let's go up here and see how we're doing. Once you've got the shape that you want, and just take your time and use the shape tool to alter parts of the inside duplicate, the inside clone. Now that orange inside is obviously not correct, so what I want you to do is press Control-E or just the eyedropper tool to sample the inside color. Once you've got that looking the way that you want it, what I want you to do is to take both pieces, put them back on top of actual nozzle in the photograph. Now take the blend tool, go from the darker brown to the lighter yellow, and it looks as though the default of 5 steps works. So for the moment, you're done with the nozzle. Let's move on to the body of the picture. Now you'll see there's little parts that come out, these little nubs like there. I want you to ignore them, because what you're going to do is simply draw the can for the moment, and we can add those shapes later. So it's not hard. You're going to have to make a curve at the bottom. And I'm doing this with the pen tool. So I'm dragging. Now I'm just going to click a point and drag that point using the tool up to the top. We're going to go across the mouth of the watering can because we're going to cover it up later with the drawing of a lip. Now, okay, here I've got it in white and it's clear inside. Take the circle tool and I want you to build the outside of that nub. You see I'm positioning it right there, and you can right drag to make a copy and move down, and those don't protrude quite as much, so make them just kissing the outside just a little bit. What you're going to do now after you've got the third one done is to marquee select those third shapes, hold shift and click the outline that you did, and then add shapes. Press Control-1 and boom, you've got that complexity there. Now I've filled our silhouette here with just a brown color. What you're going to be doing is taking the fill tool, and you've got 2 points there, but it looks as though there's about 4 different color variations across the body of the watering can. So what you do is with the last control point, I want you to use the eyedropper to select the far left point, select the far right point, and I don't know why this is going to CMYK, but okay, now we're back to hue, saturation, and value, and go over to the far right. Now I want you to double click on the gradient tool to add a color stop, and you can see where we're sampling over there. When you click that, you're going to go over to what is represented as the third color, and I want you to build a fourth by double clicking there, and you're going to go over to the corresponding point on the watering can. Now that's a pretty decent representation of the colors that are going across the watering can. As you can see, it's a little bit harsh. You might want to play with the linear gradient control points just a bit. If you notice around here, it gets lighter on the picture. Now the solution to that is to, what you're going to do is make a loose shape around that area with the drawing tool of your choice, and it doesn't have to be tight because we're going to intersect a copy to get it precisely the way we want it to look. So what you do is you'll go around here and complete that shape, and then what I want you to do is to click on the watering can body. Well, okay, first we want to get it to the color we want. You've got those two. Control K puts the copy over it, and what you do then is press Control 3 to intersect shapes. Now that you've got that shape there, you can use the transparency tool to build a linear fill and work with that transparency. So there aren't any hard edges. You can even make that shape a little bit bigger. And what I want you to do is to also avail yourself of the feathering option. And what I want you to do is just play with it so that mimics the right-hand side of the watering can. Now what I'm going to do is show you how to make the highlight on the watering can. You just click white and then feather the daylights out of it. Okay, until you've got something like that. So as you can see, we're progressing along, and this is looking like a pretty good watering can. We're going to select all, put it over where it's supposed to be, and then nudge it over to the right. So we've still got a clear working space, and the body is in exactly the same place as where the nozzle should be. Now you're going to do the rails, the outward bumps, the piping on the body. With the line tool, what you want to do is set the width to about 10 to 12 pixels, do rounded edges, and you're going to use the blend function again. So you make the outermost object, one of two, a very dark color, so I'm going to move this over, and with the color editor set to line color, I'm going to pick like the darkest color in that top nub. There we go. Almost. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to press Control K to make a copy, and I'm going to color it a very light color so you can see the difference here. Let's go over here and pick something lightish from the lighter part of that rail, and then I want you to zoom in and put that narrow piece right toward the top, and then we're going to move it out of the way for a moment. And as you can see, we've got some darkness going on over there. So what I want you to do is, with the editor tool, we're going to shorten the thinner of the two lines. And what you do is you click a new line, and then you delete that segment simply by pushing backspace on the selected node. Now that we've got a shorter one and a longer one, let's connect the two and see what it looks like. I think we need more blend steps, so let's try 12 here. But once you deselect that piece, I think you're going to see that you've got a pretty nice looking object. Now that you have that pretty nice looking rail, what I want you to do is we're going to make a couple of highlights. To do that, we're going to use the pressure profiles. So I just want you to draw a line from one end to the other, and it's going to be white. And then I want you to go get the line gallery. There we go. And we're going to take a look at pressure profiles here. And I believe that we want the ellipse. Yes. And that looks just about right. If you do a little bit of feathering, that looks like a beautiful highlight. Now we've got a thinner one over there. We can just right drag and then release to make a secondary one. And if we feather a little bit more, it looks different than the first. And those are some pretty nice highlights to the shiny can. Let's put our piece there. And this is really coming along. We're going to move that over just a little bit. And we can get rid of the obstruction to our view here. Now, notice that there is a darkness from left to right that kind of comes down. So what I want you to do is, with your drawing tool, go right through the center of the nub, and then if you can see over here, it's turning a little bit dark. That's the shape you want. Okay, that's not the color you want, but if you add a little bit of feathering, and you're going to want to press Control-Shift-B to put that to the back of the nub that you created. You have to do that a couple times, and there we are. And actually, in your finished drawing, this is going to look excellent. What you want to do is you want to pick the color of the darkest part of the shadow. Now that you've done that, with the selector tool, you can move it back, and I'll tell you, it's going to look really good in the finished drawing. What we want to do now is to do the two bottom nubs. They're going to require a little different technique, and I don't think you want them quite as wide. I think you want them perhaps 8-10 pixels, something like that. When it looks good, as you can see there, we're going to convert that line to a shape. We're going to use different technique than doing the top nub, and that's because these are rather indistinct. They don't have hard edges. So with the fill tool, drag from left to right and sample the right side. It's going to be a dark color. And then what I want you to do is to double click in the center and select a bright red after creating the new control point, and then make a dark red at the right. And that works pretty good, but as you can see, we have an almost highlightish red color there. And what you want to do is to create an ellipse and angle it a little bit. And of course, that's got the last used color, so let's make it a different color and then recolor it a second time. There we go. And if we feather this a little bit, I think what we have is the non-specular highlight to the rim that we just created. Up there, we move it up there. And actually the second one can be created using the first. So what you do is you right drag both objects down. Okay, and then let go. And as you can see, this has less of a lighter portion there. So what you can do is actually size it down a little bit. Okay, it's wider and it's narrower. And we're going to select a different color. And always remember that Control-Shift-B puts something behind something else. So if you draw a rectangle, what we're going to do is create a shaded rectangle to put behind the two pieces. Do some feathering on it, select the color, the darker color beneath the nubs, and if you put it there, it's going to cover up both nubs, but then press Control-Shift-B until it is put behind the two. And now that you've got it looking that way, I think we're just about done with all the edge work. What we're going to move on to now is the soldering point of the spout on the watering can. And this is not too difficult to draw. And what you'll be using is a elliptical fill. Let's make this outline a little thinner. And because Zara picks up the last used properties of any object, I'm going to make this white so it's a little easier to see as you work on it. And because it's going to go behind the nozzle, you don't have to be terribly concerned about that very last shape there. Now that it's turned brown, I just made it white and moved it over. And we see that it's fairly accurately drawn. And like I said, there's a dark point at top and a dark point at bottom. So what I want you to do is select the elliptical. We're going to go for the inside color, which is a taxicab yellow. And then clicking the outside, it's going to be a little bit darker. Move your cursor over there. And that looks good. And you remove the outline and use the profile to accentuate the inner color. And you might notice that that's a fairly good, acceptable replacement. And what I did was I nudged it over to the nozzle, and if I press Control-Shift-B to put it back, it's going to be fairly representative of what we saw in the picture. The bottom rim of the can is a little different than these bends in the can, and we're going to use the rectangle tool instead of other tools to create the shape. Zara hangs on to the last used fill. Let's create a white outline and get rid of the color inside so you can better see. What you want to do is you want to align at least one of those two edges, then double click on that smart shape to create a rounded corner. And then what you want to do is convert that shape to curves. And with the shape tool, you can drag the edges down. And now it's going to be some manual editing of control points and control handles. It would probably help you the best, because these handles aren't always visible in full quality view, to move your view here to wireframe. I'm not done yet. Here we go. And I can see now that these corners are not displaying handles that are perfectly parallel here. So we'll fix that a little. And over on the other side, whoa, we need a lot of work. So you click on the top control point and move it down. Do the same thing with the bottom one. Move it over. You may want to go to, you may want to return to wireframe view to see where the handle is. And this is taking a little bit of work, but this is a unique shape. Now, don't worry that I'm producing left and right ends that are going to sort of resemble spikes. The left and right top edges need to come up, because what you're seeing in perspective is a little bit of an edge of the can before it becomes invisible, before it goes to behind. So that shape is okay, and we're going to do a little editing on it in a couple of seconds, but let's do the same thing to the left-hand side. Make it spike up. There we go. Now, if you were looking closely, you'll also notice that there's a thin, light red line above that. But let's get to coloring this guy first. Let's use the Fill Tools Linear Blend Mode and double-click a few points on there to get the variations in the reds on the bottom of this can. And I think let's make it 5 color control points are reproducing the bottom of the can quite nicely. And when we remove the white outline, you can see that it just about blends in. Now with the drawing tool, I want you to hand draw that line that you see above the can. That could have been a dent or a soldering point or whatever. But in any event, the more detail you put into a drawing, the more photorealistic it's going to look. Now what we want to do is move that shape up, go get the color indicator for lines, not shapes. So it's a light red. We've colored it a light red. Now we're going to move up the bottom piece, and we're just about done. What needs to be done now is to create like little pizza slice sort of shapes, because the can is acquiring some light from the side and the back. So you create a shape like this, and of course it's going to take on the last gradient fill. So we click at a solid color and maybe use the color editor to refine that color somewhat. There we go. Okay. And from a distance, that's going to look pretty good, you know, at a 1-to-1. And on the right-hand side, what you want to do is to make that same sort of pizza slice, but we're dealing with a darker area, so we're probably going to want to play with a darker color. Here we go. No pepperoni on this slice. And play with a little transparency to blend it in a little bit better. We're going to be dealing now with the hole on the top of the water can. And we start with kind of a zucchini shape that describes a major portion of the back. We use several samples along a linear. And I'm selecting the first node and creating a second one. And once I fit that over there, and I want you to do the same thing, make the colors match that general outside area. We're going to add two more pieces. This is going to be the inside piece. And really, pause this video anytime you like to get the shapes that I'm talking about. That's going to go on top of the zucchini shape, and that represents the back of the lip of the top of the can. And use the linear fill to and the color editor to sample those two colors. And as you can see, one fits behind the other. Now this back piece doesn't have to be very well drawn. It just has to be kind of a rectangle. Now I'm going to remove the white to these two pieces, the white outline, so you can see how they go. And this back piece, as you can see, is just a rectangle that goes from light to dark, and that represents the top back edge. So again, use your Control-Shift-B and Control-Shift-F to put things before and behind things. That irregular shape that you saw second goes in the middle. I'm sorry, it goes on the top, and the first shape you created goes in the middle. And that bottom triangle there is showing, but that's only because it's showing in the original image. We're going to use the nudge tool now and move it over to the actual watering can. Before we do that, we're going to move it right next to it. And if we select just that triangle there, what we can do is we can send it back. And after a little bit of refining, I haven't sent it back yet. You'll see this. There we go. That's a fairly accurate representation once you have the pieces in place. If you take a look at the left and at the right, you've fairly well illustrated the top of the water pitcher. Now let's move over and we're going to take a look at how the handle to the watering can is drawn. And it's kind of drawn ribbon shape. There's a very thin outline that I want you to start tracing. And that's a constant. That's the front edge of the handle. And because the handle is not being shown direct on, what you have is kind of a ribbon effect where there's an extension to the top, at the top, and an extension to the bottom. As you can see, this isn't a thin strip. This is a larger piece here. So you're just going to let that line represent the front edge, and you're going to use the color sampler for the line color to get an approximate edge, and I think it's going to be like a light brown, and that's going to represent the front edge of the handle. There we go. That's about the right color. Now we've got two pieces. We're going to do the longer piece first, and that one begins at the bottom, and it's okay to pan the screen and it's okay to zoom out, but what you're basically doing is tracing what I'm calling the ribbon part, and that's the lower part of the handle. And once you've got a shape like that, and I've made it in white, what I want you to do is to first of all color at the top color, and then use the linear gradient of the fill tool, click on the first handle, and then click on the main color, which is a goldish yellow, and move that end handle up and down until you've got the fall off just about correct. Now, I think You might want to add a third color. I don't know. I guess I did here. So what you want to do is double click, and then you've got 3 color control points on this. I'm going to make a 4th here, and then move the dark, and then to the gold, and then to the dark again, and put it in place. Now, the very bottom of the handle needs to be connected. It was welded to the bottom of the water can. So what I want you to do is create sort of a triangular shape, and let's zoom in here and show you what we're talking about. It's got to connect in sort of a triangular fashion, creating a shape that makes that transition from the bottom piece that you created to the rest of the handle. A little grayish brown gradient there, and move it over, and there's a last piece that has a little bit of variation on top. I want you to do the same thing to the top edge of the picture, and basically you've gotten most of the picture done. As far as the flower ornaments go, what you want to do is put a mold shape around the vector pattern that I gave you at the bottom of the first page. With the mold tool, you click on the pattern banner, and then with the shape tool you pull down to create that arch. And what you're going to do with the linear tool is to drag from right to left, and then sample from light to dark florals. The other page that I just showed you has no picture in it, so you're going to copy and paste your finished picture into the image, and as you can see, it looks pretty darn good. Now, there's one last thing that you might want to do. If you notice very carefully in the picture, there's a reflection because those tiles are reflective. So what you do is you drop a copy and turn it upside down using the mirror tool at top. Press Ctrl-Shift-C to make a bitmap copy. Ignore the warning. Use the alpha channel when you're selecting to copy, and then click Create, and forget about the warning again. This is the original that you can delete, and this is the bitmap copy. You've got the original on the other page. What I want you to do is select the photo tool, and over at far right, make this image as blurry as possible, because then it helps suggest a reflection image. And I'm going to ask you to press Ctrl-Shift-B to put that behind the vector image you had there. And now with the transparency tool, drag from top to bottom just a little bit, drag your original handle up and make it a little more transparent to make it vague, and use stained glass mode and fool around with the handle a little bit. And I think we've just proved that through tracing we can emulate an image and actually put it into a photograph, and it stands up to some fairly fine scrutiny. So I hope you had fun tracing without cheating, and I'm glad you've joined us on